where I came from and why I do what I do. I feel like it's important for me to share where I've come from so that you know why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that you know the struggles I've had, so that you know that I can relate to the struggles that you might be having. I'm McCove Johnson. I am a spiritual and emotional health coach, and I specialize in helping women who have been impacted by childhood emotional neglect to recover from the impacts of that and to break the cycle so they're not passing it on to future generations. And so why is that important to me? As I was thinking back of like, how do I summarize 40 some years of like where I came from? Um, First of all, nothing I'm saying is blaming anybody. Things just were what was. And we experience things through our own filters, our own lenses, and those things aren't necessarily true, but they're valid. That's what we experienced. It's how we felt, how we thought, um, even if it doesn't match the facts. Like you can see eyewitness testimonies, people witness the same thing and have very different stories of what happened because of their perspectives, their filters, what their focus was on. Um, so, but two of the phrases that came to mind thinking about where I came from was on the outside looking in and one-sided relationships. So I always felt like I was standing back observing my life and observing life go by. Like I wasn't really part of it. I was just watching it go by and didn't know how to enter in, didn't know how to get off the side of the parade. And um, and one-sided relationships because people trusted me, people would confide in me, people would consider me a friend, and I considered other people friends, but I didn't have anyone and I didn't know how to be the one that had a need, to be the one that needed support, needed encouragement. Um, so one-sided in that I was giving, I wasn't receiving, and I didn't know how to. It wasn't that there was people that didn't want to give me something. I simply didn't know how to receive. And so when I became a mom, well, so watching life go by and not knowing how to enter in, not knowing how to receive in relationships, um, not knowing who I was, like questions all the time of like, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing? And um, wanting to have a relationship with the Lord where I could get those answers from Him, but I didn't know how to do that either. And um, when I would try to change and try to grow, things just wouldn't work. I wouldn't make any progress. Like the depression would come back, the discouragement would come back, the messy house, the clutter, the mean mom, the yelling, um, just all the stuff that I so wanted to do away with, and I just couldn't. Like it just wasn't working. And um, I think my brain went two different directions. um, so just I struggled as a mom to be the mom that I wanted to be, and I guess that like I knew I needed to change because like I was painfully shy. Like I didn't like to talk to people in the grocery store. Like I would avoid eye contact. Um, I would just, yeah, I was just painfully shy and awkward. I didn't know how to interact, and I didn't want my kids to be like that. So in the simplest thing of starting to smile at people in the grocery store line and say hello instead of pretending they weren't there. Simple things like that. That was like, I don't want my kids to feel like this, so I can't act like this. Um, and carrying that over into like learning how to have healthy conflict, because I grew up believing that any conflict was basically betrayal. Like it was not okay to disagree. You couldn't have relationship if you were disagreeing. And that's not true. But if you grow up with that, you do not learn healthy communication skills. You do not learn how to have a disagreement and have relationship. And it's totally possible. Um, Grew up with my behavior being totally tied to my identity, if not my identity entirely. So if you do well, that's good. If you make a mistake, you're bad. And there wasn't a continuum. It was one end or the other. Um, Emotionally, like logically, I knew that wasn't true, that like I made a mistake, but I'm not as bad as someone that intentionally went out to do something bad or whatever. But like emotionally, it was just good or bad, black or white, and totally dictated by behavior and outcomes, not just behavior. Not just did you try hard, but did you do well? Does the score, does the end product, does whatever say that you did well, that you're worthy? And I didn't want to pass that on to my kids either. And um, so just all the struggles with like not being able to grow, and like just hating myself for not being able to change, for losing it with my kids again. And the shame of like, if anybody knew how I treated my kids when I'm having a bad day, just awful, like yelling, hitting, um, just stuff that is so not okay. And it wasn't like a constant, but of course, wish it never happened at all. And not knowing what to do with it. Like, where is this anger in me coming from? Where is this total lack of patience coming from? And not having answers, not knowing I could go get help, or not feeling I could afford help, all kinds of different things in there. Um, so, and I'm kind of like, for December, I want to talk about, I'm going to share my story and kind of my journey. So today, I don't want it to be a big discouragement. Like, this is where I came from and where maybe you are. And, let me know where you relate to my story. Um, or if you don't relate to my story, that would be fabulous too. Um, but just seeing like where it came from. And so why does it matter to me that women, especially Christian women, learn to overcome childhood emotional neglect? So childhood emotional neglect is not having your emotional needs sufficiently met as a child. And having your emotional needs met gives you emotional resilience. It gives you a strong sense of identity. It gives you confidence. It gives you communication skills, because you can tune into what's going on with you to be able to communicate that. So, like, it's separate from communication skills, but it's needed to go with communication skills. And just allows you to connect in relationship. And so, if you didn't get that, there's the nurturing that you missed, and there's the skill sets that you missed out on. And so, you need healing for the emotional needs that weren't met and the wounds that that created. And then you need the skill sets to like, what does this look like? Because in my journey where I had information, but I didn't know how to apply it. I say it's like giving somebody a power saw and not telling them they have to plug it in, or at times like felt like I didn't have anywhere to plug it in. Like, okay, you've given me this tool of maybe boundaries and telling me how it will change my life, and like I can see what you're saying, and I can understand like, oh, if I could have boundaries, like that would make such a difference. But I had no idea how to apply it in my life. I had no idea how to use it properly. So it would come out like manipulation instead of like a boundary. It would come out as an attempt to control instead of as a proper boundary. Because boundaries are about what I am going to do. Boundaries aren't anything about what anybody else is going to do. And it's easy to get that confused because like, well, if you yell at me, then I'm going to leave is a boundary. That's what I am going to do. I am going to leave if you yell at me. But often it comes out as don't yell at me or I'm going to leave. Well, then that's like an ultimatum. Like they're actually free to yell at you and you are free to leave. It's both. It's not, I don't get to tell you to not yell at me. I just get to say, if you want me to stick around, don't yell. And it's so subtle. It took me a long time to see where am I setting a boundary and where am I just trying to control the situation. Like, I don't want to be yelled at, but I'm going to stay here. So just don't yell at me, which I don't know why I'm using that as an example. I don't have anybody in my life that yells at me. Years ago, a couple of my kids did, but we're through that, thankfully. And as that's a piece of knowing me, I have a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So I've been through one set of kids as a very broken, struggling to grow mom for most of their growing up years, and finally got some tools. Well, yeah, I just got tools all along the way. There wasn't like we got this and it changed everything. No, I got a tool here and a tool here, and things just gradually improved all along because I was continually pursuing growth and changing. And so now I have a 3-year-old, and people are like, oh, you've got it all figured out. No, I would love to say that I had it all figured out, but I don't. I know a lot more of what not to do, and I feel like I know a little bit more of what to do, and continuing to pursue learning and growth, and then you throw in that it's just an entirely different world than it was 20 years ago too. Um, Always learning. And so I think that's a unique thing that God has given me of, yes, I have walked through it. And so I have that perspective of a mentor, but I'm also still right in the middle of it. And so I have that perspective too of this is fresh and raw and real because I'm learning and growing too. And I believe God gave us our children to shape us into who we need to be just as much as he gave them to us to help shape them into who they need to be. And so they will push our buttons because that's things God wants to heal in you. And if we didn't have somebody there pushing that button, rubbing on that rough spot, we might not have to work on that. And so, yeah, just be encouraged. Like your kids are pushing your buttons for a reason. It's to make you more like Jesus and to push you back to Jesus because we can't do it on our own. And so let's kind of wrap up real quick of like why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I know that desire in my heart to not pass my stuff on to my kids, but I didn't know how. And so now that I do know how, I want to help other moms that have that same desire to be able to heal in their own life and not pass it on to their kids and their grandkids. And through what the Lord has taught me through just my own study, through some mentoring, through some training programs, coaching, like putting it all together into there's the healing piece and there's the skill set piece. And just putting that together in my work. And so, yeah, thanks for watching. If you have an idea for a clever way for me to end these, that would be great. Share your thoughts and any questions you have about like, so for December, I'm doing my stories. So I'll have 3 more kind of focusing on some of the bigger shifts and tools Andrew says learning to communicate with God has been amazing. Yeah, that's one of my big, I'll be talking about that next week of how that came in and changed my life and changed our family. And that is where I start all of my coaching clients, because without his voice, it's all just so much harder. And yeah, and how he communicates is not like necessarily talking in an audible voice, but he does communicate with you because you're his child, you're his sheep. He communicates with you. And digging into the sea, and for Andrea too. Yeah, and that's when I found probably 5 years ago that childhood emotional neglect was a thing. Like, it explained my life, because the feeling on the outside looking in, the um, not knowing who I was, not having any confidence, relationships being one sided, like all of those are symptoms of childhood emotional neglect. And so, again, like, I've got an answer, I want to share it. I want it to make a difference in people's lives. And um, so, thank you for commenting, Andrea. She's been working with me and she is seeing it making a difference. So, yeah, I'll be talking next week about that, learning to hear God's voice, learning how he communicates with you, why there's lighthouses all around me. And then the 21st, I'll be sharing some from my book, Mess to Majesty, and Mary's story, and how I relate to that because of my little one. And then the 28th, more about like what it looks like to work with me, how I've incorporated these things that God's teaching me into a system or a process for women who are where I was, to get to where God wants them to be. So thanks for watching, and we will see you in the group.